The Joyful Friar podcast is made possible by the generous support of our friends. To support the podcast, please visit nathan-castle.com and donate today.
Hi, and welcome to this episode of the Joyful Friar podcast. I'm Father Nathan Castle, your host, and I'm today with someone who feels like an old friend. We run in a lot of the same circles and see each other at conferences and so on. But I want you to know Suzanne Giesemann, who is kind of, so well known that it seems funny to even introduce you to people that don't know you, but that's my job today. And I'm reading from a little bit of material that your team has supplied. Suzanne knows how to live in a left brain world. As a Navy commander and aide to the head of the U.S. military, she was unaware of anything beyond this earthly realm until something really awful happened to you. Do you want to tell people about that just in a little bit?
Two really awful things happen, and they happen to all of us, awful things. So even to label them that is, judgment. But the first was being up close and personal on 9/11 as a Navy commander and working in the Pentagon on that day, flying over Manhattan on that day, and the last aircraft in U.S. Air. Impersonal. The more personal, awful thing was the death of my stepdaughter 18 years ago this week. We just celebrated what we call the Angelversary 2 days ago.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And she was pregnant at the time, I think.
She was 6 months pregnant with a boy.
Yeah. Yeah. So in your material, it says that her death catapulted you on a journey leading to the unexpected gift of evidence-based communication with non-physical consciousness. Known for, I can testify to this, your joyful, down-to-earth style, that makes you so attractive for people to be around. And in conferences, you're always like the queen bee. You've just got people like swarming all over you because you're just so joyful and pleasant to be around. You make deep spiritual concepts easy to understand. You lace your teaching with evidence-filled stories of the greater reality and practical tools for providing proof of our multi-dimensional nature.
I no longer let the waves of the ups and downs of human life knock me over like they did. I mean, if I get out of sorts, it's very short-lived. I've just found so many tools for finding that inner joy. That's really what I want to help people to learn and to find. Mediumship, connecting with loved ones who have passed, is what I do, and it's what provides the evidence that we are souls. So it's an interesting change from people normally hear of mediums and all they do is connect with loved ones across the veil, most of them. But we all get it, don't we, once we talk to spirits, that there's so much more than this life.
Yes. There's so many ways in which, I come from a Catholic Christian perspective, and I was, one of the letters of St. Paul yesterday at the Sunday Mass was really about rejoicing in all things. And half the time he was writing from prison. And even when they let him out, there was always the threat that he was going to be beaten or stoned to death or whatever. And he just didn't stew about enemies or fret about what's next. He just knew who he was and what he was about. And that up and down business that you're talking about, he managed to not only move through it, but teach other people how to do that.
Yeah, and I'm laughing at myself because just an hour ago I was dealing with two different customer service representatives and they cut me off and it was all that waiting, and I actually reacted. I cursed out loud and I got totally into human mode. My husband across the room said, "I feel your pain." But I felt it too as such an anomaly because I don't normally react that way. And it's lovely to no longer go that way because this life is nothing but ups and downs.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I can hardly even imagine you cursing. I wish I could have been there to hear that.
We call them sailor words, Father Nathan.
All right, sailor words. My dad was a sailor, and he didn't allow it at our house because he heard it all day.
Okay.
We were. I can remember having my mouth washed out with soap early on, and it only took once to teach me I'm not going to do that again. I always am interested in people like you and like me that are bringing a message to the public. Uh, is it, what would you say the heart of it is to begin with?
Oh, the heart of it is that our heart is the center of all that is connected to all other centers, that love truly does heal everything. In this reality, not necessarily instantly, but when we can realize that we are all interconnected,
Yes.
that's love. That's
Yeah.
the heart of everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like sometimes I'm a translator when I'm at IANS things or talking with people like you that in my tribe, uh, we call ourselves the body of Christ, but it doesn't just mean that it's only Christians. Christ means anointed one, which an anointing was the way that the Hebrew people uh, initiated somebody. It was like a crowning ceremony that everybody had. And so it wasn't you were like at a Christian baptism, we anoint the child or the adult that's being baptized with oil to show them and show all of us that this person has a royal nature, you know, a nature that is anointed, and that everybody has this. It doesn't set you apart and above it, but it claims your dignity and uh, your deep value.
I love that. And I love that you're a translator. I was a language major, so words to me are fascinating, and we're all saying the same thing in our own language. You just reminded me, and you spoke about IANS, the International Association of Near Death Study, at the last conference I attended, and you may have been there. I think you were there.
I was, yeah.
There was a gentleman who asked to have a few words with me. And we went off to the side of the lobby and we sat down, and he said, "I've just taken your mediumship class, and it's just thrilling." It was thrilling for him to find out that anybody can learn to connect with loved ones across the veil. And he had helped someone in his family heal as a result of the connection he made.
Oh.
But then he told me that Father Nathan, for 40 years, he was a Pentecostal pastor. And I was stunned. I usually don't even use what I call the M word, mediumship,
Yeah.
around evangelical Christians, because usually they react with fear to what I do. And I said, "Well, have you shared this with anybody in your ministry?" And he said, "Yes, I did." And I said, "Well, how did they react?" And he said, "Well, they want to know, is this okay?" And he said to them, "It's Christianity with the walls blown out."
Oh, all right. Christianity with the walls blown out.
I love that. It's just like it takes all the teachings of Christ and all the teaching about love, and then just shares it with everybody, just blows it open wide.
Well, I'm glad you that we're only a few minutes into the episode and we're already talking on this topic because it's very dear to my heart, and uh, I love words too. I think you know that about me, and I was just thinking about it today. I preached earlier this morning at a daily mass, and I was saying to people, now the Gospels have a different texture to them for me because I pay attention to how that writer wrote what they wrote. You know, they had to work with a story, but they still had to craft it. They had to locate it, for example. It had to happen somewhere with somebody. And the stories are written about 50 to 60 years after the events they're telling. So the author has to do something like a screenplay. They have to decide, what would this look like, and where would it be, and who would be where in the scene. All of those things wouldn't have been remembered 60 years later. So anyway, with regard to mediumship, media, it means to be in the middle. That's all. A median is just a thing that's in the middle of the road. It's also a tasty way to enjoy a steak. There's lots of media in middle. Medium it just means to be in the middle of.
And it's an interpreter, like you said. We take what we get and we put it into words, what we discern, using better words, and we interpret that hopefully accurately for the recipient of the message.
Yes. And in my world, the Catholic world, I usually use the word prophetic or prophet to describe my gift because that's a New Testament word. And even an Old Testament one. You know how at a lot of Christian worship or Jewish worship, someone will stand and do a reading, and it will be from the prophet Isaiah. And at the beginning of it, there's a narrator voice. The prophet Isaiah was going from this town to that town. And then he got there, and then he said, "Hi, my name is Isaiah." So that person has to inflect and do a second vocal thing. And then before long, the prophet Isaiah is sliding aside, and his voice is being used by God to say, "I want you to stop oppressing the poor." A voice moving through the prophet.
Oh,
And,
I got goosebumps. Yeah,
oh,
that's what happens in a reading when I have a really good connection with the spirit. At first, I'll say, "Well, your son is here, and he's saying this and that," and then it just becomes cumbersome to be in the middle, and then we just merge so beautifully that I start talking in first person as that young
yeah,
man, which is channeling, and
yes,
that's the best. Yeah.
yes. And even that word gets upsets people too. But it's in Spanish, it would just be canal. Have you
Yeah.
been in Spanish-speaking countries and turn on the TV and it says "Canal seis,"
Sí.
"Canal dos"? Uh, it just means a canal is just something that contains something flowing through it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to have all kind of uh, darkness or evil associated with it. It would depend on what's flowing through it.
And another use of that word channel is when I teach mediumship, I tell people that it's like you pick up a remote control. This is my phone, but pretend it's a remote control. And just through our belief that we can do this and the intention to connect with a certain level of higher consciousness is like pressing the remote control. You know what channel you want, and your intention, when you just say a word like shift, gets you to that channel. We don't have to know how the remote works.
Yes, I certainly don't know how gifts I've been given operate. I just know that they do. You learn more about them as you employ them, but still,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean. I'm interested when we go to conferences. I was just at one here in Tucson. That was very high level, the Science of Consciousness seminar. Do you know about that one?
I don't, but I would love to know more about it.
Well,
Yeah.
it's in its 30th year, and it's a joint effort of the University of Arizona and the University of Michigan.
Okay.
And it's held in Tucson every other year, and then I think it travels other places in the odd year. I think that's the way it works. But it had a lot of academic papers that had words in it that I didn't know the definition of. And I was the dumbest guy in the room trying to listen to what all these other people were talking about, but I picked up part of it. But they're talking a lot about brain synapses and
Okay.
how energetic messaging of any kind moves through us, and,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
what kind of nature, what is it another human voice of a currently living person? They're open to the kind of things that you and I experience in our own ways, but they're really trying to drill down into uh, all kind of things in quantum physics and physiology. Uh,
Good.
Yeah.
Great.
I wanted all these years ago when I started being public about these things that I do. I always wanted to be in the academic conversation because my career has been in campus ministry, and I've always wanted to be a part of the bigger conversation, not just being the church next door, but being embedded in the life of the university.
Hmm.
And of course, I'm interviewing you and talking a lot, so
That's all right.
let's get back to you. Um, well, what are some of the things that are in your newest work? How long has this new book been out? This Awakened Way, Making the Shift to a Divinely Guided Life.
It's been out about 6 weeks and it's doing fantastic. I love that people in the comments, we have over 300 5-star ratings on Amazon already.
Uh-huh.
People say they feel the energy of spirit in the book. And I know they feel that because I didn't exactly channel it. But of course, anytime we do something creative, if we can shift into that expanded state of soul awareness and flow, it's going to carry a higher energy, which this certainly does. When I go back and I read some of the words, I say, wow, I don't even remember writing that. But
Yeah.
it is about living a consciously connected life. What does that mean? That means you realize you're not only human. The awakened way is based on 3 principles. You're not only human,
Yes.
you're part of one big web connecting all that is at all levels, physical and non-physical, and love is the healing creative force of the universe. So
Yes.
when you understand and live by those principles, which is very simple to do, it just takes presence and practice, then you realize you're never alone and you are receiving guidance from this conscious connection. And it is divine guidance, no matter what level it comes from. If you tune into the heart with the intention of being guided, it works, it happens, and it's transformational.
I've forgotten your origin story. Did you grow up with any kind of spiritual foundation or cosmology?
Absolutely none. And that's why when you start speaking about the Bible and religion, I go, uh-oh, I'm going to look like you felt at that Science and Consciousness conference.
All right.
But my parents were absolutely non-religious and actually didn't even want us to talk about it in the house. I don't know why. They must have had something in their childhood that really soured them on religion. And so I just picked up basic religion, just as you do by going to school with kids who go to church. But what I've learned from my own personal experience in meditation since my stepdaughter passed is all through that personal experience, which I love.
Yes. Well, what were those three things again? You
The three principles of the awakened way.
Yeah.
You want to hear them again?
Yes, please.
Well,
Because
one is you are not only human. And the beauty of this book is I share so many evidence-filled examples that we are not only human, that I call them NOEs, no other explanation moments than that we are connected to sentient beings across the veil and that we are guided by a divine force, which is love. So you're not only human, you're part of one big web connecting all that is. This goes beyond synchronicity to flow and guidance and knowing that we're not alone. And number three, the love is the healing and creative force of the universe. So that's something we can harness and use. And the more you do that, the more your life flows. So the first half of the book, part one, is the foundational information that gets you to truly understand those principles. And the second part is, I think there are 25 practices, tools, and exercises that anybody can start doing immediately, simple things in your life, so that you go about moment by moment, knowing you're guided, knowing you have guides, knowing your loved ones who are passed are right here, calling on them, shifting your focus from only human and cursing at the customer service person to the more expanded state, laughing at that and saying, oh, there I was being human.
Yes.
And coming at life from a more expanded, loving angle.
All right. Well, thanks for being the teacher to teach me. I didn't get it the first time, but now I wrote it down. Again, at that translation thing, I listened to you speak, and I did grow up in a home that was deeply Roman Catholic and Catholic school, and both of my dad's siblings were Dominican nuns who taught first grade.
Wow.
And my mom was a great teacher of spiritual practice, not just of rules and regulations of a religion. And I didn't come up with that Catholic guilt that you hear Catholic folk or formerly Catholic folk talk about. That wasn't part of my world. But I was taught that I was a child of God and that I was made of God, that I was made of the stuff of God, and that I was kind of a hybrid being, that I was human and my body would live for a number of years and then die. But the deeper part of me was more than that, and that it would live on. And there was nothing seemingly strange about that. It was just basic Orthodox teaching.
But yet so many people feel it's sacrilegious to believe that.
Yeah, that's true. And that might be why there's always a lot of people around you, because they're hearing good news. Because you're telling them something that's just deeply true, and they resonate, vibrate.
You know what really causes eyes to open when I give my presentations? It's when I say, you are already whole and complete at the level of the soul. We're so programmed to believe that we're broken, that we're wounded, that there's something wrong with us. That's our human story. We're all living the story of me, who states your name. And yet when you go into the silence for just a minute at a time, you
Yes.
start to realize, wait, there's an aspect of me that can observe the story. So what is
Yeah.
that?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
A lot of people that I know, Catholic Christian people in recent years, have paid more attention to spiritual practice than just memorized prayers or something that seems outside of them, somebody else's words or whatever, and having some contemplative or meditative practice. And it doesn't take long. You're right. If you start just being still and not filling that time full of concepts and words, before long, you observe yourself.
Yeah.
You see yourself as someone sitting and praying or meditating, but you have it's often called the observer.
Yeah.
You
And
become
that's the
the
soul.
observer of you. Yes. Yeah.
That's the part that is whole and complete already. And when we learn it, we can step back. One of the favorite parts in the book that people are now commenting on, it's fun when I see what people like the most. In fact, when you get Kindle, you can see anytime more than 10 people have highlighted a section, it gets a dotted line. So I say, ooh, that part resonated with people.
Oh,
But
that's
what they
important.
love is this one part where I use the analogy that we're like, the soul is like a theater goer. We go into a theater, pay good money to be horrified or entertained or whatever, knowing it's safe because we can always step out into the lobby. Well, the soul comes into this body knowing it's safe because it's always going to be the soul. So the soul is basically sitting on the balcony at all times, watching us play our role, even though it's us, we were the same person. And when we can shift into the soul awareness, this is the part they like, Father Nathan, and we see that our human side is about to do something painful or silly or that might get us in trouble, we go, no, no, don't do that. And sometimes we don't listen at the human level and we just turn to the next soul beside us and we say, pass the popcorn. That's the phrase right there. Just it helps you step back and see the story for what it is. It's very real when we're in it. It can be painful, but we can also step back and say, oh, pass the popcorn while I access higher guidance on how to deal with this.
You're reminding me of a couple of people. Have you ever been around Jean Houston?
I haven't been around her, but I'm familiar with her work. I have a couple of her books.
Maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, I paid to go to be at her house. She had one of those salons that for about like a dozen people, and you go and you're in her home for 2 or 3 days.
Oh, nice.
It was lovely. She's just an extraordinary person. But one of the ideas that I remember from that so well is entelechy. Are you familiar with entelechy?
Oh, yep. I couldn't define it right now, but I've read it, and every time I read it from her, I have to look it up.
Well, it sounds like the way that you're describing that soul observer. It's a Greek word. Telos having to do with the purpose of a thing. Its teleology is the reason that a thing exists, what its function is, and that the entelechy, she says, it's the entelechy of a acorn is to become an oak.
There you go. Yes. Yeah.
And that we have within us an entelechy that is trying to become something, or already is the thing that we're trying to become.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
And that she's a meditative practice where you go into quietude for just a few minutes. I think it was about 5 minutes, and ask to speak to your entelechy.
Hmm.
And then you get up and you move. And I remember doing that exercise with her, and oh my God, it was like my other self was like right in front of me, and we were
Cool.
looking at each other. And so sometimes when I need an answer to a thing, I think of asking my future self, because I am both a temporary being in time and an eternal being.
That's
So
it.
sometimes I think I can do that validly as a Catholic Christian without violating anything, and say, Holy Spirit, please help me talk to the version of myself that's already been through this problem. Because
That's beautiful.
you can see a problem right in front of yourself and think, I don't know what to do. I've never been in this circumstance. It's completely unprecedented. But I'll just say, let me talk to the to the future version, the glorified version of myself that's already been through this. How did we get through it? How did we solve it? And so
Nice.
asking for kind of inner wisdom with the Holy Spirit.
And that's the kind of thing that this book leads people to. And I say that it's not a self-help book, it's a higher self book.
Oh,
Because a lot of self-help books focus on the problem, try to solve the problem from this level, but we show you ways that you can go to the higher self to solve issues that are at this level, but the guidance and the advice is up here.
do you know Byron Katie?
Oh, yes. Haven't met her, but I'm so familiar with her work as well.
She was a guest on my show, and she gets people to pretty much vomit on paper, get mad at somebody, and think of every evil thing you want to say about them, and put it all down in writing. Judge your neighbor, write it down, ask 4 questions, turn it around. That's her little rhyme.
Yeah.
And the 4 questions are, yes, but is it true? And question number 2 is it really true? Because your ego is going to stand by anything you ever thought, declare it to be true because I thought it. And then, I think the 3rd and 4th ones have to do with feelings, and how do I feel when I believe this is true? And then what would my life be like if I no longer believe that? And kind of, it just reminds me, it's similar in some ways to what you're talking about, or might not be completely, above, but if not in the balcony, somewhere hovering, somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, it requires you going beyond stepping onto the balcony to observe all that.
Yeah. I'm wondering, my podcast is called The Joyful Friar, which was St. Dominic's nickname. So I asked him if I could use it, and he said, I never called myself that anyway. Go ahead. But it's part of the reason I joined this particular religious order, because of joy. I just thought that's what I want to help contribute to the world, or magnify in some way. I'm wondering, you just look like a person that enjoys your life all the time. What gives you deep joy or joyful hope, especially when you're not having a good day, and it's not just natural that you're happy because you just won the lottery? What gives you joyful hope?
What I've discovered is that joy is ever present, and it's not the same as happiness. So what gives me great joy is realizing that I was raised in a family with parents who didn't know how to nurture, but I can find that nurturance within now, and nothing can take that away. And that brings me this joy that right now I feel it bubbling up, and I just want to share that with everyone. I want everyone to know that the love is right here. I feel it now, and I couldn't have accessed that years ago, but through all these tools that I've learned as a result of my stepdaughter Susan's passing, the worst tragedy we could imagine, has led me to the greatest joy beyond my imagining. So what brings me the greatest joy is helping other people find this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One thing I wonder, when I know that you teach practices about how to deepen one's own understanding and gifts and all of that, do you have what's your own spiritual practice like? And specifically, before you move into spirit realms, do you have any kind of thing that I would call protective prayer, or ways in which you use discretion about who's allowed near, who isn't, or how you do it?
I don't have a protective prayer. It's more that I know that that is intrinsically our true nature. And I know that then I have nothing to fear. And the other day I was shown, as I was awakening some very scary beings, and I met them with love, and they dissolved.
Yes.
So I don't pray. That's the answer to that. I don't feel the need to do that, because that awareness of being the light is so intrinsically part of me now. But my practice is every morning I come into this room or wherever I am at the time, and I begin my day immediately after walking our dogs. It's sacrosanct, that time of sitting in the silence, to connect with my higher self and then higher beings, my guides, my team of guides. And I just sit and send them my gratitude. Mm-hmm. I ask, what do I need to know today? I ask for guidance on issues in my life. Then I sit quietly and listen. And then I ask my guides to give me a message that I will share with the world. And we call that the Daily Way messages. I actually have an app that's free on smartphones called the Awakened Way app. And it goes out by email and the app, and on Facebook, we reach about 70,000 people a day with that daily message.
Good for you.
So I just sit quietly and I wait and I hear them. Here we go. And I just write. It's like a 1-paragraph message. And then I thank them and get on with my day. I post it. I go downstairs, post it online. And
would you go into a little bit more detail about the phenomenon that you just talked about of waking into the presence of something dark and unpleasant
what brought that about? I know what it was. I had noticed myself reacting in a human way to some trigger during the day. So as I went to bed, I said, please show me the cause of that. It's probably some childhood wound. Please show me what caused it and how to clear it out. And so I was awakened at 3 a.m, got up, went to the bathroom, came back to bed, and I was about to drift off, and suddenly felt these I would call them demonic beings. It looked like gargoyles, and saw it in my mind's eye. And in the past, I would have been freaked out, but instead I just said, well, I asked for a lesson, and I said, I know I can't die, and I know you can't hurt me. I love you. What do you want? It was amazing, Nathan. They came at me and put their hand on my throat like this, and I just said, I can't die. I love you. What do you want? I just said it again and sent the love. I could have gone into total fear. And suddenly it was showing me the throat chakra is the seat of speaking your truth. And I was shown that I was not allowed to speak my truth as a child. They showed me issues with my mother. And these were thought forms that were coming through metaphorically, very frightening. And as I said, I love you, suddenly they just started dissolving. And I said, we're going to transmute you into something that can be of service to me instead of scaring me. Help me speak my truth. Help me speak even more clearly to audiences. And we did a little ritual, kind of like a shamanic thing. We transmuted that into something that was helpful. It was a very personal experience, but very real. It wasn't a dream. It was an experience like meditation, and it's gone. But the phenomenal thing for me was how much instantly the human fear was there, and that I was able to step back, observe it, and give it love from the soul level, and it just healed everything.
Good for you. I want to do that translation thing again, because I'd like to share with our audience how I do something similar.
Okay, great.
In fact, in the monastic tradition that I'm a part of, my order is semi-monastic. We come from the Benedictine and the enclosed tradition of contemplation and meditation, but I'm supposed to have the prayer life of a monk, but the availability to people that brings me out.
And that's OP, which
we're the Order of Preachers. Us and the Franciscans were founded in the early 1200s with that in mind.
Yeah.
And there's a thing called the morning demons that apparently are a deal that when you're just waking, there seems to be a phenomenon of unholy ones that want to take that moment when you're barely coming awake and try to turn it dark, get you off to a bad start. And the practice that I was taught was to recognize them, call them out, and bind them in the name of Jesus Christ. And I don't think of that as overly harsh. They could be velvet herbs. They don't need, to be hurtful. It just means to immobilize. And you may not do that here. I bind you in the name of Jesus Christ, and then I say to my guardian, let's bless these. You can't leave until I've blessed you. It's up to you whether you receive my blessing or not, but it's on me to at least offer it. And then I say to my guardian, please escort these to the most appropriate place that's not right here.
Fantastic. And I never heard of that, yet it was just shown from the soul level. That's how to deal with that. And that's thrilling to me to find out there's an actual practice of that.
I teach it from time to time because people don't know what to do when they are embarrassed sometimes to talk about this kind of thing, because it can sound like you're a crazy person. And
it's scary. And then if you reject it, it only grows in power.
exactly. And then there's another thing. Sometimes people have a kind of binary way of thinking of everything as either good or evil.
Yeah.
And that if it's a demon, that it must be sent to hell. And well, St. Thomas Aquinas, who I'm trained in, and Aristotle before him, Aquinas taught that God created only good, and that everything has goodness in it by its nature. Now, you and I can do everything in our power to try to destroy goodness, but you can't radically get rid of it. It's built into the universe. And so Aquinas taught that God still loves Satan and the dark fallen angels for a couple of reasons. First of all, they're his children.
Hmm.
And secondarily, God is love, and nobody can change God's nature. God
Yeah.
is love, because that's what God is and does. So whenever I'm around dark spirits, or even if I think I am, the church has a conditional form. Like, if you have not been baptized, I baptize you in the name. If I'm in the presence of a demon or a dark spirit, a dark entity of some kind, if I am, I bind you in the name of Jesus Christ, and I now bless you.
Hmm.
So I teach that to people because, and even little children can do that if they're bothered by that kind of thing. You can help them move into their own power and say, you don't have to put up with that. These entities are not allowed to be around you.
But happily, and having done thousands of readings for people, I have never encountered an evil spirit. I've encountered loved ones who want to talk to their loved ones. One of them scared me because if I had met him in a dark alley, Nathan, I would have been frightened by this guy. But it was just somebody's brother, and that was his nature. He wasn't a bad person. He was just intimidating.
Yeah.
So it's all in how we frame things in our own mind based on our own background and experiences.
Yeah. You know that my particular niche is helping these people that died suddenly and violently. And
Yes.
many times they're just the victim of a car accident, or some of them have been murdered, or some suicides or whatever. But once in a while, there are people who other people don't think should be included,
Mm.
the bad
Mhm.
guys.
Mhm.
And I trust that the guardians bring to me the ones they want to bring to me. And
Yeah. Where's my picture? I'm looking at a picture. You can't see it now. I've had only 2 of those real experiences where the spirit was brought by guardians, and it blew my mind that those spirits were actually, one of them not even allowed to talk to me, just standing there to make their amends to their loved one. This was a father with his daughter, and the guardians were showing that your father did truly evil things, but is surrounded by love until he can change this energy, and we're helping him with that. But it was very fascinating.
well, that's often part of my work, but we just cooperate with the others that are we're on their team or they're on our team, however it works.
One team is one team, right?
Exactly. That was the third thing that you said, and that, or maybe it was the second one, part of being one big web.
Yes.
Again, running back to my Catholicity, Catholic, the word means universal, and unity means one. So it's ironic, because when you use that word in proper English, you capitalize it to mean the smaller group, the one Christian denomination among many who are Roman Catholic with a big C. And then when you use it with a little c, it means the universe.
Oh, nice.
It means everybody. And so I believe I'm supposed to be a priest to both of those universes. The big one, that's 1.4 billion humans on the earth at present, and the other universe, or the universe within a universe, or the one that the larger universe than the one that we think is the whole thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, you're going to be in at the Ions convention soon, aren't you?
Yeah, I am one of the keynote speakers, and sharing, I think, 3 or 4 really profound stories from spirit that show these awakened principles in action.
Well, it's in my backyard. I'm in Tucson, and that's just they're on the south end of Phoenix. What the hotel we're in is just about the first thing you see when you drive up from the south. So
Okay.
I can get there real easily, and I'm looking forward to it. But I look forward to seeing you there too.
Same here. Yeah.
We're near the end of this. I want to make sure that you get to um, make this audience aware of how they can interact with you. We've mentioned your book any number of times, but um, what do you want my audience to know that that might help them be engaged with your work?
Well, my website is very comprehensive. It has a lot of gifts on there that help people with meditation. And my YouTube channel has over 400 videos and a weekly podcast. There's just a lot of people are interested in this for diving in. And I have multiple courses online for people who want to be mediums and people who have no intention of being mediums, but want to learn to connect with loved ones who have passed and with guides and higher consciousness. So if this appeals to you, check out SuzanneGiesemann.com.
All right. And the conference that we just mentioned is open to the public. If you're a member of IANS, you get the membership rate, but it's also open to everyone. So you could go on the website, IANDS, International Association for Near-Death Studies. I'm sure the website has got all kind of blazing material about how to register for the upcoming conference. It starts, I think, August 28th and runs for about 4 days. It's in
Good one.
Yeah, and it usually brings together about 700 people. And one thing I love about it is it's just a little bit of heaven for me in that it's a place where I've never been judged.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody there has a story as wild as yours,
Well, I was actually judged at an IANS conference in a good way. It was the first time that they brought in a medium, and that was really groundbreaking for them to have a medium at more of a intellectual conference. And that's my goal, to bring mediumship mainstream. And I shared a lot of my NOE, no other explanation stories in my keynote. And somebody came up to me and said, the person sitting next to them turned to them and they said, "Do you think those things really happened to her?" And I love that because they're so incredible that they are hard to believe. And yet, as you know, Nathan, when Spirit gives us things to share and experiences and what I call adventures in consciousness, you don't have to exaggerate a word. They're phenomenal.
Exactly. Well, I enjoy being there. I'm almost always the only Catholic priest there, but I feel very much at home, and I feel I meet lots of great people and get to share their understandings of things, and even if they're not my own, well, who cares? I have another kind of overarching concern about the country, and you have worked in the centers of power and so on. I'm really concerned about our ability to be united and not just look at every election cycle as an opportunity to defeat the opponent. Because as long as we do that, we're not moving toward unity. We're just being.
There's no doubt that we're divided and almost 50-50. That's what's so interesting to me. And that's the black and white. That's the duality. That's 100% human nature. So my guides just tell me, don't give up hope, remain positive, and just keep teaching the awakened way so that people will learn to shift to the soul's awareness. And from that perspective, you seek ways to align with others. It's not all black and white. So this is not going to change overnight. And yet the chaos and the discord will lead us to find a better way. That's one of our taglines. There is a better way, the awakened way.
Yes. Well, I enjoy that because I get to be in conversations with people that have very different understandings of the world and the universe that I do. But I love talking with them and listening to them and learning about how another person operates. And there's just so much goodness there. So anyway, I didn't plan on doing a great big commercial for the IANS convention, but I've just done that. So
if I could add to that, you do not have to have had a near-death experience to attend the conference.
Exactly.
And what I love about that is that it validates so much about what people most want to know. What happens when we die?
Yes.
And beautiful, beautiful stories.
That very often speakers at IANS will, before they even begin, will say, "May I see a show of hands? How many here have had a near-death experience?" And after those people raise their hand, the next thing they normally ask is, "How many have had a spiritually transformative experience?"
Yeah.
So for an organization called Near Death in its title, they already have a breadth, because I wouldn't be there. I have not had a near-death experience. I've had spiritually transformative ones, and I belong, and they make me feel like I belong. So anyway, enough of that. Well, it's been delightful to be with you. I'm grateful that you chose to honor us, grace us with your presence, and blessings upon all that you're trying to bring to the world.
Thank you so much. I learned a lot today. I appreciate it.
Maybe we can have a moment together in the conference, although, I know that that's a really busy time, especially for you, but maybe we get a moment. We'll see.
I'll make time. Yes.
All right. All right. Well, audience folk, thank you for being a part of this episode of the Joyful Friar podcast. Remember, you can find me through my website, nathan-castle.com. If you have a question for me, specifically if it pertains to stuff that I write about in my books, the work that I do with souls and crossings, I'd like it if you read at least one book before you ask me a question, because I find that the questions I'm trying to answer are often answered in a book already. But nevertheless, remember that I'm praying for you and wishing only the best for you. Thanks for being here today. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Joyful Friar. Please like, follow, and subscribe. You can visit me at nathan-castle.com. Send me a message by clicking the contact button. God bless.